And welcome, brothers and sisters, to the very first Spooky Shelf Video Haul. That's right, it is a Spooky Shelf season, and we must fill our shelves with the spooky movies. We already have a few, but today we will dive into the new additions to our archive. But first, we will need the blessings of the spooky friends, so let's meet our ambassadors. First, we have our friend, Lord of Darkness from the movie Legend. His movie is one of my favorites and grateful he could make it. And then we have Mola Ram from A Temple of Doom. He's an evil priest and he goes, Akalima! You know what I'm saying, but he's a cool dude. And then we have Jacques. Look at him trying to be all sexy. He's seducing you. Watch out! He will seduce you. And then we have Frankenstein. He's one of our older friends we have here. Hello, how are you doing? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Frank. And then we have Gizmo from Gremlins. He is a little upset at me because we don't have Gremlins on 4K yet. I tell him to be patient. And of course, we have Judge Death grabbing us in the corner. And he comes courtesy of Friendo number 1 because I am Friendo number 2, the conscientious vampire and the film archivist for the Burning Hand of Friendship, aka I'm the movie guy. And today we're diving into the spooky movies I picked up over the past 5 months from a boutique of labels and around town and a Barnes and Nobles. So come along, let us explore the big black hole where I threw all my money away. And now that we got the blessing of the 6 spooky friends, we can start the spooky shelf haul. And as you could see, we have a box here. And it's filled with a lot of movies, and some of them are in fact from Orbit DVD. I found, I think, around 3 or 4 movies from that place. And I also have other things. Let me see here, because I forgot. Oh yes, Kino Lober, Blue Underground, and Arrow. Arrow had a couple of sales here and there, some at Barnes and Nobles. So let us go through the treasures I have found. And we start with something bitter and a sweet. Bitter because it's not a 4K. Sweet because it's Sugar Hill from a 1974, one of my favorite blaxploitation films, directed by Paul Mazalansky, the guy who started the Police Academy movies. Isn't that a wild man? And this is a revenge movie, basically. The protagonist, her boyfriend, gets killed by the mob, and then she goes to a voodoo lady to help get revenge on the suckers that killed her man. Isn't that romantic? And it has old school voodoo zombies. And if you like a Blackula or JD's Revenge, this might be your Huckleberry. But reminder, these are a product of its time. It's from the 1970s, so you know. The soundtrack gets funky, and if you don't like a funky, I don't know what to tell you. I love the funky music, and some of the best soundtracks of the 1970s comes from blaxploitation. Cannibal Apocalypse 1980, and I can't believe there is a 4K transfer of this. This is not to be confused with a Zombie Apocalypse or a Cannibal Holocaust. And honestly, I've not seen this one in a very long time. But this is a notorious, gory, cannibal, zombie, veteransploitation hybrid of a movie, but heavy on exploitation. It was directed by Antonio Margheriti, who is better known for Castle of Blood, a classy Italo-Gothic horror from the 1960s, and he directed one of my favorite war-exploitation films, The Last Hunter, which I highly suggest. But the reason you watch this movie is really for a test of endurance, as this was one of the first movies I saw as a little teenager that made my tummy queasy, so I cannot recommend this to everyone unless you know what you're getting yourself into. It also has some charm with its soundtrack. It sounds very late 70s, so it does get a little funky. But you also get John Saxon, Nancy's papa from Nightmare on Elm Street, one of the parents that murdered Freddy Krueger. And here's more Italo horror, Nightmare Bisha from a 1989, directed by Umberto Lenzi, also starring our pal from the last movie, John Saxon. And this is a personal favorite, a later-day giallo, but it assimilates some of the slasher tropes of Western cinema, personified by the faceless motorcycle man causing death in a Daytona during the spring break. And the soundtrack, well, it's a mixture of cheesy 80s rock and Claudio Simonetti from Goblin, which is really the highlight, because it's not my favorite soundtrack for Italian horror, but the cheesy rock adds to the atmosphere of douchery that would encircle a late 80s spring break. Anyway, can't wait to see it in the 4K, and these are my Kino Cults. And this was a little bit of a FOMO buy, as I've been waiting on a 4K release. But the word around town is that some of the original footage is missing or deteriorated, so we may never get a 4K transfer of this occult classic. So I had to grab it for the spooky shelf. And of course, I'm talking about A Stage of Fright from a 1987 on a Blue Underground, directed by Nicolas Soavi, who also directed one of my favorite horror films, A Cemetery Man. He also directed The Church, which was considered an unofficial sequel to Lamberto Bava's Demon movies. But this is an artsy-fartsy giallo slasher with grisly deaths, cool cinematography, and a better soundtrack than Nightmare Beach. Like, I can vibe with it, man. Another cult classic we welcome into the spooky shelf. And now, we're tapping into the Aro video movies I grabbed during the last Barnes & Noble sale. We start things off with Alice, a Sweet Alice, from 1972, directed by Alfred Dassault. And this is one I had not seen in quite some time, and had to grab this beautiful 4K, and I have to say that I'm usually not the slipcover guy, but had to grab the limited, as the artwork deserves this cool presentation. So I guess we have a giallo theme going on, as this is also considered by many an American giallo, and I couldn't agree more. The pacing, the style, a little bit more than a slasher, and even though it is kinda predictable with its twists and its turns, the characters, the mood keep it thrilling, and of course, you get an appearance by a very young Brooke Shields, who really is not the star in all this, but aha! The first plot twist. I highly recommend. Clive Barker's Hellraiser, Quartet of a Torment. And of course I needed this. A well-deserved upgrade from my Anchor Bay DVD of Part 1 and 2. And really, folks, the only Hellraiser movies you really need. But this was a favorite franchise growing up. That is, up until Part 4 came out. That's when I started questioning my loyalty. At least with Part 3, despite its campiness, it was entertaining. But that was really the beginning of the end. But 1 and 2, absolutely favorites. And I devoured the Clive Barker book Hellbound the Heart, which is a quickie read, by the way. And these movies also coincided with me getting into the goth and the industrial music, especially when I started dating a witch during my high school life. And then there was a rumor, one of my favorite industrial bands, Coil, they had done a soundtrack for a Hellraiser, but it was rejected because it was too scary. And don't get me wrong, I love a Christopher Young score, but would love to see a cut with a Coil spookiness. Anyways, there is an interview with Stephen Thrower, who is in Coil, and he provides an insight. But all I am saying is these movies were a big deal in my teenage life, and it certainly impacted the horror genre. Clive Barker's world building, the mythos. It was a unique look of horror that had never been seen unless you are reading an S&M magazine. And hey, look, this could be us, you and me. But anyway, yeah, this comes with a book, which is why I captured it, because there is another version coming out, the tetralogy, and it's not going to be as fancy. And if you love a Hellraiser like I do, this is the one to get. I mean, just look how cool this is, man. Come on. You know I have to give an Arrow some compliments. This is one of the first fancy pants editions I buy from them, and I'm very pleased. And I may throw away more of my money on these fancy pants editions. Anyways, I cannot wait to see 1 and 2 again, and I'm willing to give 3 and 4 a second chance. And now we're hitting the tasty little pile I got from Orbit DVD. These first two are upgrades from my old obsolete Anchor Bay DVDs. Both are from Arrow UK, and even though they weren't part of the sale, they were only $21.99 each for a 4K. Now that's a nice price, Orbit DVD, and the Phenomena and the Tenebrae are two gems from Dario Argento, his best from the 1980s if you ask me. With Tenebrae you got the thrilling, violent giallo, and guess who's in this? Our pal John Saxon, and you have Claudio Simonetti once again giving us a soundtrack with a spooky sense. And then there's a Phenomena, the first Dario Argento film I ever saw, though I had no idea who he was at the time. And back then it was called The Creepers, and at the video store I had a sticker telling me it had music by Iron Maiden and Motorhead. Not to mention Jennifer Connelly, who I fell in love with at 13, a love that never died. And next we have The Wicker Man from 1973, directed by Robin Hardy. And this one, my friends, is the 4K import from Studio Canal. The 4K disc includes all 3 cuts of the film and the special features, unlike the domestic steelbook, which only has the final cut. But I also got that one. As for the film itself, it's one of my favorites from the 1970s. I saw it on VHS as a little teenager and it made a big impression. The mood, the music, and Britt Ekland, who I fell in love with at the age of 13. I'm so sorry, Jennifer Connelly, but I also love Britt. But enough of my fantasy love life. The reason I rented this back then was because of Edward Woodward. At that time, he was in The Equalizer, a cool TV show I loved with a cool theme song by Stuart Copeland. Anyway, this is, my friends, an excellent British horror. It inspired movies like Midsommar, even graphic novels like The Empty Man by Cullen Bunn. And the soundtrack, don't get me started. Folky, pagan, 1970s weirdness, yet somehow catchy. I even have the soundtrack on the vinyl. And the last, a tasty movie from the Orbit DVD pile, we have a Possession from 1981, directed by Andrzej Żuławski. And once again, we have another upgrade from my old Anchor Bay DVD collection. As you could see, it's the drive-in double feature, and I'm still going to keep it since I'm not sure if I'll ever upgrade the shock. And you know what? Anchor Bay was the first label that I used to collect when I started buying DVDs as a collector, you know? But anyways, as for the movie, this was introduced to me by my pal Aramis back in the 2000s. Some of you might know him as Anti-CGI on the Instagram, but I instantly became a fan. It's a definitely bizarre, filled with eccentric characters, my favorite being Heinrich, played by Heinz Bennett. He needed more screen time, but in a nutshell, it's about a protagonist, Sam Neill, whose wife, the beautiful Isabelle Adjani, asks for a divorce, and then things go crazy, especially when Sam finds out who Isabelle has been seeing. But I won't spoil for you, but trust me, it's a spooky. And now we have reached the Vinegar Syndrome movies I bought in their last sale, starting with a Bio-Zombie from a 1998, aka Sang Fa Sao Si, directed by Wilson Yip from Hong Kong, who is better known for his biography of Bruce Lee's Kung Fu master, Yip Man. Excellent movie, by the way. But Bio-Zombie is a totally different movie. It is a zombie comedy, much more than a horror film. It is very silly, with some slapstick and a gross out moments, not for everyone. And I have not seen this since the early 2000s, but did have a great time watching it with my friends, smoking wacky tobacco and drinking some vino. If you are allergic to silly Hong Kong comedy, then stay away. But I have to say, I absolutely love the care Vinegar Syndrome put in this. The sleep cover, the sleep cases, they're sick, as the young people say. I absolutely love this, and I'm glad to have this on my spooky shelf. And the next Vinegar is a delirium photo of Gioia, 1987, directed by Lamberto Bava. And this is another late giallo with a lot of sex and a lot of violence and a walking eyeball person starring the bellissima Serena Grandi. And this is another movie I have not seen in a very, very long time, but remember thinking it was one of Lamberto Bava's best, next to the first Demons, that is. And again, amazed we are getting this on the beautiful 4K, which for a Lamberto Bava film, this is well deserved, as even though he does not reach the same heights of his papa, Mario Bava, he truly knows how to dress up the screen. Anyways, I'm very happy to welcome it into the spooky shelf. From Beyond, 1986, directed by Stuart Gordon and co-written by Brian Usna, the same team that gave us Reanimator, remixing an H.P. Lovecraft story here. But this one is a personal favorite, a movie I bought too many times, as you could see. I was perfectly happy with my Scream Factory, but then this evil slipcover, it whispered to me, it demanded a double dip, and what the baby wants, a baby gets, and sometimes you just got to spoil your spooky shelf. But seriously, this is a unique movie. It's a visually insane, dripping with atmosphere, and the art direction is how you say French kiss, the best purple and pink horror movie you'll ever see. But I also need to show off my cassette of the soundtrack, a spooky soundtrack, which is the best played during this month while you clean up your house, just to add a little tension, a little dread as you scrub the kitchen floor. I also have to mention we've got the unmistakable Jeffrey Combs in this, playing one of the scientists trying to wake up the pineal glands in humans to unlock the so-called sex sense. And mamma mia, they end up waking up a lot more. Corpse Mania, 1981, directed by Gui Chi Hung, who also directed one of my all-time favorite supernatural kung fu movies, Boxer's Omen. And this is also a Shaw Brothers movie, who are better known for their kung fu flicks, but they also made horror movies. And this one is a special, as they mix the giallo with some Hong Kong madness, and I've been waiting to see a cleaned up version of this since 2005. So the only time I saw this was from a bootleg VCD I bought in a Chinatown, which no longer plays. So I'm very happy with this. Welcome to the spooky shelf. Texas Chainsaw Massacre number 2 from 1986, directed by the legend Tobe Hooper, a sequel to his masterpiece. But honey, this is no masterpiece, but it is fun. Anyway, I bought this because you know I'm following the collector's rule. If you have a part 1, you should probably get the part 2. But you know, this is a different kind of movie from its bigger brother, as this is more of an edgelord, dark comedy. If you like a gallows humor, come aboard, because it gets very dark. I mean, it is the sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so what you expect? But you do spend more time with the charming Leatherface family, and you get an over-the-top Dennis Hopper, which if you could tolerate it, it's a fun time. Now this is probably my favorite pick of the haul, Flesh for Frankenstein, aka Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, and Andy Warhol merely distributed the movie. He directed nothing. It was directed by Paul Morrissey. But look at this beautiful slipcase. And this is another movie I saw as a teenager, and it made me feel queasy, and I thought I did not like it, but it stuck with me, especially Udo Kier and the sidekick Otto. But word of warning, it does have over-the-top gross-out stuff like blood and guts and body pieces, but as I get older, this just feels like edgelord satire, especially when you look at the news. But certainly, at the end of the day, this is just top-tier schlock horror. This was not made for everyone, so it is okay not to like. But I find it interesting and fascinating. Transgressive art can be cool. And also, I never knew there was a 3D version. And will I be brave enough to see this horror in the third dimension. 3D glasses included. This is my pick of the month. And that was the last of Vinegar Syndrome. Next we have the Severin movies I bought during the last sale. And of course, if I got the flesh for Frankenstein, I had to get the blood for Dracula, which I really think is the better movie. But Frankenstein has the better packaging. Now, this is an upgrade for me from the Criterion DVD that was actually one of the first Criterion movies I bought when I started collecting movies. But back to this, even though it's not over-the-top packaging like Flesh for Frankenstein, which really has a psychotronic packaging, it's still an excellent looking 4K release. It includes a lot of extras. It also has the soundtrack on a CD, and the packaging is good enough. I'm not wowed, but it is still a cool looking box with our campy pal Udo Kier, and again, not for everyone. But look how good they look together. Burial Ground, 1981, directed by Andrea Bianchi. Another personal favorite from my heavy metal teenage years. And this is an over-the-top Italo zombie exploitation schlock. Cause you got to take a look at this. Cause are we really supposed to be afraid of this guy? But it does have a spooky moments, and it's not all ha-ha, hee-hee. It gets kinda gory, but it's also unintentionally funny. But I need to point out that the original artwork right there, it's what I saw at the video store so many years ago when I was a little teenager, and of course, this is another upgrade for me. And this DVD came from a pack of top-tier zombie schlock that is no longer in print. The Zombie Pack number 2. I know how original, but it's what is inside is what counts, and it also comes with a flesh eater and the zombie holocaust, not to be confused with the cannibal holocaust, but either way, happy to have this in my spooky shelf. A butcher, a baker, a nightmare maker, 1981, directed by William Asher, who is better known for his work on Bewitched, and he was the director of the very tame teenage movies from the 1960s with Frankie Avalon and Annetta Funicello, the Beach Blanket movies, which is why this is so surprising. This is a spooky movie. And I watched this during COVID with my COVID girlfriend, and we really liked it. Well executed. It kept my interest. Definitely a deep cut for the slasher genre. But as most good slashers go, there is plenty of thrills, plenty of mystery, and plenty of shock. And basically, this is a movie about an overbearing aunt and her unhealthy fixation with her nephew. Mamma mia! But you also get an early appearance of Bill Paxton, and I can't wait to see this on the 4K. And that is it, the end of my spooky shelf video haul, and I promise, friends, I will have more movies to share as I slowly upgrade some of my favorite movies from my standard definition DVD collection. But please, share the movies that will be on your spooky shelf this season. And if the spirit of Toby Hooper moved ya, bless that like button and tap subscribe to seal your place among the initiated. Don't you want to be with the initiated? Come on, look at Shinji, he wants you there. Come on, man.